right. Welcome to all of those of you who are watching from home. Thank you for your interest in our student society. The next item on the agenda is a territorial acknowledgement. Would anyone like to give the territorial acknowledgement? If not, I can. All right. I want to acknowledge that our board meeting tonight is taking place on the unsurrendered territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, including the Songhees, the Esquimalt, and Wasanic nations. It's often painful and difficult to know that our country, school, and student society are colonial institutions that directly benefit from the displacement of Indigenous people. And while none of us were the people who directly forcefully displaced Indigenous people, most of us directly benefit from it. And I think it's always really important to remember that in everything that we do, both in our personal lives and our work here at the UVSS. For an action item towards decolonization, I'd like to pledge to lobby the university to give free tuition to all Indigenous students that come from the nations on which the university stands. Is there anything that anyone would like to add to that? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the adoption of the agenda. Are there any amendments to today's agenda? Seeing none, do I have unanimous consent to adopt today's agenda? All right, the motion carries. Moving on to presentations and announcements. Are there any announcements at this time? James.
Yes, I have circulated director contact information forms, and if you don't have one, please let me know. We are collecting your information, particularly your addresses, so that we can file your information with BC Registry Services. And this happens every year as we get a new board or any times of change in directors. And this is so that we can adhere to the rules of the BC Societies Act. Does anyone not have a form? Did anyone not receive one earlier from me? Okay, thank you.
Sampson?
Yeah, just a final reminder that there's going to be a shuttle bus going to the ferry tomorrow afternoon. The 1:30 p.m. bus is all filled up, but there's still some space left in the 3:30. So if you know of anyone trying to head to the ferry tomorrow afternoon, they can go to our Facebook page and get a ticket through the show pass. Oh, I was going to bring it up in my report, but also there's going to be an accessibility town hall on November 18th at 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. This is before our next formal board meeting, and this is about some legislation that the government is working on right now in regards to accessibility in BC. They're creating a standalone act for it, so it's some pretty cool stuff, and they've been doing some consultation around the province for the past month, and so this is just a chance for students on campus to have a say in what's going into that legislation. So if you have any more questions, I can answer them later.
And I'd just like to remind everyone again that Othello opens tonight, so if you would like to watch it, it runs till November 23rd, and there are student prices at the door, or you can call ahead of time, and that's happening at the Phoenix Theater on the campus.
Thank you. Are there any further announcements? All right, moving on to reports. We did just have a board meeting 3 days ago, so I don't expect there to be many reports. So yeah, if you don't have a report, simply state that, and that's totally understandable. First up is a report from our executive director.
I don't really have anything new since Monday.
Since Monday? Yeah. All right, moving on to reports from committees and councils. Is there a report from Advocacy Relations Committee?
No new report. The next meeting is next Thursday, the 14th.
Is there a report from Campaigns Committee?
Yeah, we had a really exciting Campaigns Committee this week. We provided some updates on our initiatives, including lobby days, sending delegates to the BC Speakers Forum, our Divest presentation, the Let's Get Consensual rebrand, and our continued naloxone training. The next training will be on December 4th. I encourage you all to come. It went really well. As well, we added 2 new campaigns to our portfolio. As Get Out the Vote has phased out, there's more capacity for us to work on initiatives that students have brought to our attention. So we're going to be bringing back the Make Transit Work campaign and Textbook Broke. Textbook Broke will have a slightly different mandate than it has had in past years, as the Director of Outreach is doing work on implementing and working with the library and other folks to implement OERs. This campaign will focus on lobbying the federal government to bring back the textbook tax rebate. So we're really excited to bring back both of those campaigns, and I'd be happy to answer any questions and invite you all to the working groups if you're interested. Just let me know.
Thank you. Moving on to Clubs Council and Course Union Council.
Yeah, no new report. The next Club and Course Union Council are December 2nd.
And on to electoral.
Yeah, again, no new report, but our next meeting is tomorrow morning.
Fantastic. Moving on to events.
Yeah, we met on Tuesday, talked about some cool stuff going on, like the accessibility town hall. Hadn't had the dates or anything confirmed yet, but just got that all done today. So that's going to be happening in the Michelle Pujol room again on November 18th from 3:30 to 6:30. And happy to answer any questions about that. Also talking about steps forward, what we're planning for next semester. Got to get involved a bit with the Mental Health Awareness Week committee and talk to them about bringing this cool workshop called Table Talk that has a really cool layout that I hadn't seen before. But yeah, if you have more questions about that too, let me know. And working on an art night, hopefully for the first week of February.
Very cool. Moving on to executive committee, we met just today where we discussed space allocations, the accessibility town hall, campaign promise update graphic, which I'm really excited about. We're going to be outlining the campaign promises that the lead directors and the directors at large made during the UVSS campaigns, and kind of just updating folks on where we're at in terms of our progress, what we've completed, what's underway, stuff like that. Yeah, look for that before the end of the month probably. Moving on to the Finance and Operations Committee.
Not much to report since last meeting, which was a few days ago.
Fair enough. Moving on to member outreach and engagement. We just met today actually, where we had a debrief of our AGM. We talked about what went well, what we could improve. As well, we also talked about a social enterprise strategy that's being led by McGovern. I'm very excited to do more work on that and get students educated that the UVSS is completely separate from UVic, and that all the money spent in the student union building is invested back into student services. Moving on to policy development. This is another committee that met since the board meeting, and we discussed policy that we're voting on today. Moving on to sub-marketing.
Well, we haven't met, but I went to member outreach today, and we had a good conversation about the business survey we're going to be disseminating. It's the first one that's been done since 2015, and that's really exciting. It's going to have about 2 questions per business, so 18 questions total, as well as a few additional ones that yet to be specified, and that's going to be going live in conjunction with the annual survey, and hopefully we're going to get a lot of respondents this year, so that's really exciting.
Very cool. Moving on to sub-occupants. We've had our meeting for the term, and we'll be meeting again next term. But aside from that, there are no updates at this time. Moving on to the International Student Relations Committee.
Yeah, so we have a Facebook group now. So if you meet keen international students, I believe everyone in this room, I invited them to join the committee, so you can add them to it. As well, I believe our next meeting is next Friday.
Great. Moving on to the food bank and free store.
We haven't met since Monday, but our next committee meeting is this Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
Peer Support Center.
Our committee hasn't met since Monday either, but the Peer Support Center presented to UVic Counseling Services at the same time that Grenier did earlier this week. And they are continuing to connect with counseling services this week, and our Lego social event has been posted on Facebook, and there's been promotions put up around the building, which is super exciting.
I'm really excited about the Lego social event. It's going to be a lot of fun. Moving on to reports from constituency organizations and NSU. Would folks be all right with cracking a window? I'm quite hot.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's a great idea.
You
That's like
so cool.
kidding, right?
Sorry.
Step on the bottom shelf at a grocery store.
All right. right, moving on to 6C, reports from constituency organizations and NSU. Again, it's only been 3 days since our last board meeting, so if you don't have any updates, that's totally understandable. Moving on to JAM.
I have nothing new to report except that Em got their master's degree, which is really exciting.
Moving on to the NSU. Seeing none. Moving on to Pride. Seeing none, moving on to SOC. Seeing none, finally moving on to the SSD. Seeing none, all right. Moving on to item number 7, question period. Are there any questions from members of the audience? Marlet.
Yeah, so first question, are you sure that's live streaming to Facebook? Because I can't find it.
Very interesting. We were having the same problem on ours. It says that it is live. I'm a little busy right now. I'm not sure what else could be done.
Does it say live?
Okay, are there further questions from the Martlet?
Yeah.
Or from presenters? Yes.
I noticed, like, in the Appendix A that subtext and ZAP were listed as services, not businesses. Was that an intentional change, or?
I don't believe that was an intentional change, no. I think what this is specifying is sort of what you're overseeing as the executive director, and since subtext and ZAP used to be under the general manager, they have since been moved to the executive director. And so that's something that right now I think is fine to leave as is because it's specifying what you're overseeing. And again, since we are a student society, the definition of a service is quite broad.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And is there a reason why certain things were shifted from the general manager to the executive director when the executive director's position was also shifted to a new position?
Yeah, there is. The intention behind creating this position was to increase capacity of excluded management. And so we had multiple conversations with both current executive director and general manager to ask what would be the best way to redelegate certain roles now that the the outgoing executive director is leaving. And so we decided that ZAP and subtext would be appropriate to move to the ED.
Okay. And what is the hierarchy of these 3 roles, the executive director, the general manager, and the new position, which name I don't have up right now?
Yeah, so the administration and services manager, along with the ED and GM, will both report to personnel committee, just as it is currently.
Okay, so all 3 would report to a committee of UVSS board of directors?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any one of those 3 roles that is like, because I know one of them is like chief of staff, right? The general manager?
Yeah, so the way it works currently is there's not an official hierarchy, very similar to the UVSS lead directors. Other student societies might have a president or a vice president. So the same structure is in place here, but one thing to note is that the administration and services manager is a part-time position.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Are there any further questions at this time? Going once, going twice. All right, moving on to item 8, main motions, priority business. Motion 2 here, moved by McGovern. Could I please get a seconder for this motion?
Could I just, is this where I could potentially amend this motion?
Yes, let's just get a seconder and then get that over with. Samson? Would you like to motivate / recommend an amendment?
Yeah, I would like to just recommend an amendment that this motion was recommended by Policy Development Committee.
Do I have unanimous consent to move this amendment? Thank you. Would you like to motivate?
Yes, I would. So, for those of you that might be unaware, the UVSS board voted in camera on Monday night to adjust the organization, the org chart of the UVSS to make room for a new excluded management position called the Administration and Services Manager. The intention behind this position is to better prepare the sub for ongoing changes that have been occurring at the university over the last few years. And with the resignation of our current executive director, we saw the opportunity to make positive changes to the UVSS. So the board has been looking into various ways we can increase efficiencies, supports, and tools that are needed for the UVSS to grow and prosper. And the result of this long period of consultation is to add capacity in a few areas. So in addition to creating this excluded position, we're working as well to increase a few staff level positions, which we can talk about at a later date. So since Monday, Personnel Committee has been very busy. We met up with staff at 2 different meetings, both the department managers meeting as well as the labor management committee meeting. And then just yesterday as well, we went to policy development and brought the finalized job descriptions to the Policy Development Committee. And what we're going to be voting on today is to then add those finalized job descriptions into Part 13 of Board of Directors policy under excluded management, and then go a little further as well to readjust any parts of Board of Directors policy to reflect the new duties and responsibilities and organizational relationships of this role. So I also just want to note that before submitting the finalized submissions, there are a few small adjustments that have been made since the Monday meeting. The 2 biggest being that the Food Bank and the Peer Support Center have been moved to the Administration and Services Manager, and that under the Administration and Services Manager, Part 4 under Communications, and I can even find the page if those want to reference it. Just give me a second. Should be page 12, Part 4 has been adjusted as well. And so aside from that, once these various policies have been implemented, we can then begin the vote on striking 2 hiring committees. And I'd just like to conclude by thanking the board for taking this opportunity to make a real change that will not only have an impact on this board term or future board terms, but ultimately on our entire membership.
Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote? All right, all in favor of motion 2? It is unanimous. Motion carries. All right, moving on to motion 3, which is moved by McGovern. Could I please get a seconder for this motion? Sampson. Be resolved that nominations be open to elect 2 directors to sit on the hiring committee for a new executive director. McGovern, would you like to motivate?
Yeah, so this is a good opportunity for anyone on the board to sit on a hiring committee that will have a very big impact on the student society, the services we provide, the work that we do. So I'd really encourage people to put their names forward. The current people that will already be guaranteed a spot on the committee is 1 representative from the Advocacy Relations Committee, 1 representative from our union, myself as the chair of the committee, and then both excluded managers. And so then this is an opportunity for the board as a whole to put some names forward. So I really recommend people do so.
Great. Watts?
Could you please outline the timeline of when this committee will be running?
Yeah, so the plan as it stands ultimately does depend on a few factors, but we are going to start the job postings very soon. Ideally, we're going to have 1 first meeting to debrief the committee, what the role of the position is, and from there, once we start the posting, I'm imagining early next week, we're going to leave it open for about 2 weeks until the end of November, and then we're going to be conducting interviews in the first week of December. And all excluded management positions need to be ratified at the board level with a 2/3 majority vote. So the hiring committee will then come back to the board, and the board will have the final decision. And from there, we can start the hiring process of training the new incoming executive director.
Are there any nominations or further discussion?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Fantastic. Are there any further nominations or discussion? Bird?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Are there any further discussions or nominations? Brief reason.
I'll nominate myself as well.
Are there any further discussions or nominations at this point? Seeing none. All right, so there are 3 nominations for 2 positions. Meaning we will go to a secret ballot vote. Would we like to do that now, or would we perhaps like to do that after the second hiring committee?
Now.
Okay, for now.
May I prop the door open? That may help.
Absolutely. It's so hot.
Thank you.
I should not be able to vote.
Wait, yeah, John?
I'm okay.
Yeah, one of us can be removed from this vote and we could be added to the next one if.
What if 10 people?
Well, I'm okay with not being on it, but I'm just saying it would make it easier instead of not having to vote.
Oh.
I'm okay with removing my name for this motion, so where there's no need to vote.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
All
Thank you,
right.
Olivia.
So there are 2 nominations for this committee, being Bird and Eaton, and they are acclaimed for this hiring committee. I'm sure you'll all make us proud.
We'll try.
Okay, moving on to motion 4. Could I please get a seconder for this motion? Samson. All right. Be resolved that nominations be open to elect 2 directors to sit on the hiring committee for a new administration and services manager. McGovern, would you like to motivate?
Very similar protocol. 2 notable differences are that this position obviously oversees different things, and that it is a part-time position, but also that there's a possibility that this will be a staggered start date, so it might start at the same time, but the posting might be open a little longer. Again, remains to be seen, but that is a possibility.
Sorry, like, can you say the time, like the actual dates?
So start hiring committee early next week with a preliminary meeting, then do the posting, leave it open either till the end of November or potentially a little bit earlier on into December. And then if that's the case, hopefully we can ratify at the last board meeting in December or first board meeting in January.
Great. Is there any discussion or nominations?
I'd like to nominate myself for this committee.
All right. Is there any further discussion or nominations? Watson?
I'd like to nominate myself for this committee.
I don't think they want
Is there any further discussion or nominations? Last call. Seeing none, Friesen and Watts are acclaimed for this hiring committee. Congratulations. All right. At this point, I would like to ask for a motion to move in camera. Watts?
Move to move in the camera.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Friesen? All in favor? All opposed? Abstaining? All right, the motion